Welcome to the first video in our Hearthstone budget series for the Scholomance expansion. I'm Alex from TrashcanTV, and today I'm going to be presenting to you one of the best decks right now in Hearthstone to hit the ladder and to really rock out. This is the Gibberling Druid, and we're going to look at exactly what it does. I'm going to present to you the cards we chose for this, how the deck works, and give you some ratings for it, and why this is such a great budget deck for beginners or people with a little bit lower dust count to really start getting into the game and pushing those higher rewards. Before we really get into it, we have a Discord server which is linked in the description, so if you want to become part of our community, we have a lot of people in there, all different levels of Hearthstone, a lot of beginners, a lot of more advanced players, up to some professional level Hearthstone players, all of them in that server, so link in the description if you want to join us. Be a great place to learn for you, and we'd be very glad to welcome you to the community. Going into the deck, I would like to first present to you exactly the choices that went into this, and I would like to tell you a little bit about how this deck plays, what we are trying to do, and the strategies that we're approaching. And we're going to play some sample games after to show you kind of how it looks in practice, and at the end I'll give you some ratings for it and tell you exactly what it's useful for. Like I mentioned, the deck is called Gibberling Druid, and this is what it's based on. The key card in this deck is the Gibberling. Came with the Scholomance expansion, and this is really what we're going to be using to make our burst turns. The idea for this deck is to be super aggressive. There's a couple of different playstyles in general in Hearthstone, one of which is aggro, and the point of aggro decks or aggressive decks, what it stands for, is to quickly kill your opponent doing a lot of damage. This particular deck is going to do that better than almost anything you'll be able to find in the current meta. Another key card in this deck is the Intrepid Initiate, just because it makes a good use of that spell burst mechanic, just like the Gibberling, to put aggressive stats on the board early. Also, you're going to notice that there's a lot of small spells. There's the zero cost spells of Lightning Bloom, Innervate, the mana gain that we're going to need to make early game explosive turns happen. There's also the Nature Studies to generate more spells, which is really going to help hopefully generate wide and big boards, turn 1 and turn 2 even, that people just won't be able to recover from, to pop the Gibberlings and the Initiates. And after that, we're going to be using our buffs that we're running here. We have Power of the Wild, we have the Blessing of the Ancients, and infamously Savage Roar to push a lot of damage quickly. If we have 5, 6, 7 minions on the board, that's going to amount to a lot of damage, even if they're small minions. So really what we're trying to do is we're going to outspeed people, we're going to kill people turn 4 and turn 5, and just because of that, it's a great deck for the ladder, because you're getting a lot of those games in per hour. Now, a typical game is going to take between 2 and 4 minutes, which is very, very fast. You have decks that take a lot longer than that. So with this one, you're really going to get the biggest quantity of games in for yourself, and with a positive win rate, you're going to be climbing the ladder quite fast. If you're interested in playing this deck or trying it out for yourself, the deck code will be in the description of this video, and as I mentioned, this is very beginner friendly. This whole deck runs you at a cost of exactly 1.5k dust, which is really nothing. There's 20 common cards and 7 rares, 3 basic cards with Innervate and the 2 Savage Roars. That makes for 1500 dust, which is really, really cheap and affordable. So with a little bit of grinding, a couple of Scholomance packs, you'll be able to play this and jumpstart basically your entire Hearthstone life. In terms of tech cards with this deck, there isn't a lot to go off actually, because we are going to play so fast that we completely neglected to put effects like Silence in at all. We're not expecting to see a lot of counter pressure with this at all, because we want to just run people over very, very quickly. No tech cards, this is all gas, no breaks. We're not going to play reactive, we're going to play actively, and we're going to pursue the face as aggressively as we can. Additionally to that, there's really no cards that are strictly missing from this deck either. Typically when we have our budget decks, there's a lot of cards that we're kind of leaving out because they're legends or they're too expensive that you could tech in to improve it. Not really the case here, which makes this really one of the best ones. This deck, as it is right here, 1.5k dust, is amazing and it's pretty much perfect. There's not a lot improving to be done. So we tested this a bunch, and it works really well the way it is. No legends required, not even epics required. You want to just run it the way it is. Now, one of the most important parts of the Hearthstone game is the Mulligan phase, because here you're really going to decide how well you're going to start off into the game. And that's what we're going to take this quick excursion to tell you exactly what you want to do with this deck, because the Mulligan is extremely important, and the cards you get on your opening hand are going to determine the success you will have. Due to the aggressive nature, we're going to need the cards specifically to get that fast start. So the absolute top priorities for this deck for you to keep in every mulligan is the Gibberling, the Intrepid Initiate, and the Nature Studies. Those are the cards you want, because they're going to give you those pop-off turns, turn 1 and turn 2. Other than that, second tier maybe in Mulligan, you want the Lightning Bloom. For the mana generation, you sometimes want to keep the Innervate too. Say you already have a minion like the Gibberling or the Intrepid Initiate. You want to keep those mana generating cards to get the machine churning turn 1. You can play with them right away. Just a quick disclaimer, this is Alex from the future. I noticed in the edit that I kind of misspoke a little bit with the cards I mentioned in the Mulligan tiers and the images you saw on screen. What's correct is what you're going to see on screen. I mentioned a card in a different setting than I should, so focus on what's on screen, and what I said is not what you should be following. Adorable Infestation is another really good keep to just start going wide early, and sometimes if you already like the hand that you were dealt in the Mulligan, you can even keep stuff like Dreamway Guardians or the Tree Enforcements. Generally, the cheap cost ones with absolute priority on Gibberlings, Intrepid Initiates, and the Nature Studies. Very, very strong keeps. Some cards that you really always want to throw away because they're just not going to be useful right off the bat are the buffs. The Savage Roars, the Blessing of the Ancients, and the Power of the Wilds, as well as Soul of the Forest, you can't use right away if you don't have the minions, so you want to get rid of them. You're going to be drawing them later down the line, hopefully pretty quickly, but to start, you just have to prioritize the 1 and 0 mana spells, as well as the important minions that we mentioned. Now this deck really does have a strong preference of being on the coin going second, especially in matchups that aren't aggro versus aggro, because the coin is just an extra innervate, it's just another activation for that Gibberling. So if you get an extra card on your hand, as well as being able to generate a spell burst basically for free every time and cycle into stuff like your Nature Studies on turn 1, it's a huge advantage. That can also win on turn 1, but on turn 1 you really want to hit those crisp mulligans and maybe be a bit more aggressive in your mulliganing for the optimal cards when you're not on the coin. You're obviously going to see that in the starting screen of the game. On the coin, we prefer it. You can keep those 2-cost spells every once in a while when you're on the coin, be a little bit more liberal with it. But if you're not on the coin, you want to mulligan very aggressively for those cards mentioned. Now, if you have a very good read on the matchup you're facing, or say you're playing a friend, you know exactly what deck they are playing, you can adjust your mulligan strategy towards that, and you have a couple of cards that you want to sometimes keep. If you know you're going to have an all-out aggressive battle and you're going to be committing to the board over and over again, it's not a bad idea to keep that Power of the Wild, because that swing turn of buffing is going to aid you a lot in playing for the tempo game, and trading a couple of 2/2s into 1/1s is sometimes something that can just solidify the board for you. Just keep it. Voracious Reader, also one of those cards that are fringe keeps if you have a very good read on the matchup, just to be able to refill if you know you're going to be needing a lot of those resources. Time to hop into some games with this deck and actually show what this is all about. Hopefully we can get some good samples of what this does, the weaknesses and strengths of it, and to show you how we're trying to use this deck and why it is so effective for laddering, why we chose this as our first budget deck to go with. We have Warrior here, and using a bit of our knowledge about the game right now, what does Warrior play? Warrior plays two things. Both of them are very, very slow. Warrior likes to play Bombs, and they like to play Recruit. Both of those decks start popping off once the mana limit is reached, and they really start churning in the late game. Warrior is a value class, which means we want to run it down. Now, Warrior also has a lot of board clears. Looking at this here, the Acorn Bearer looks maybe like a tempting keep, but like I said, we really want to go fast. I do like the Adorable Infestation because I'm trying to put a minion down early, but I'm going to kick both of those spells here just to keep digging for that Gibberling, because that would really be a hard turn. We're not on the coin, so we want to mulligan a bit more aggressively to pick up what we want. Didn't quite get it there, unfortunately, but we're going to have to make do with what we have here. Partner Assignment is the only thing we have here right now, and we're going to play it. It's not an optimal start by any means, because we didn't get a minion down early, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're lost. We still have the potential to go wide. Cards like Troubadour, the Dreamway Guardians, even though they're 2-drops, they put 2 minions on the board. We draw the Innervate here. We're just gonna go wide, really the important thing, because we want to profit off of all those buffs. Sitting at turn 3, and here's really where the deck comes churning. We still don't have the Spell Burst effects, but without them we'll be able to put 5 minions down here. Gonna like to go Dreamway Guardians, and I'm also going to use my Adorable Infestation to buff up one of my guys. I'm not playing around Bladestorm here, but I like to have an evenly spread damage. And the next turn I want to go Soul of the Forest to really stick this down and nail him on this one. Just waiting to draw my buff, my Savage Roar, and just win the game outright. So he plays Lord Barov, but he can't kill him right away, and that's actually quite comfortable for us because we have that Soul of the Forest. We're going to make great use of that. And we could even consider playing a little bit wider because we want to get the most value we can out of it to really stick this board down. We have to consider that we don't want to overcommit necessarily, but I do want to play at least one more minion, so I'm going to use the cow here. I'm going to use my Innervate to play the Soul of the Forest and stick a huge board, a lot of value, and this will be hard to clean up. I'm not going to hit the bar off at all. I'm going to let him do that. I'm going to start pushing face because that's the philosophy of the deck. He's at 20 health. We're turn 3. He's going to have to come up with something here. He can clear this up if he kills the bar off and has Blade Storm on hand, in which case, well played to him, but we'll see if that happens. It will happen, will it? Brawl. It's gonna brawl. It's gonna brawl. Coins the brawl, which he was pretty much forced to do. That's a good play. I'm not gonna say it was not a good play for him. Very, very strong. We'll have to come back and try to recover from this. Pick up a Nature Studies, which can be very useful. I'm definitely going to play that first and see what we can get from that here. Gonna take Mark of Nature here. None of these are great. You want to look for spells that contribute to your game plan, like AoE buffs or whiteboard generation. Gonna take Mark of Nature. And I suspect that we're even going to play it too. Use a minion here, play this for the attack, because we really want to put him under pressure. We saw him reach for the coin, which kind of tells us that he doesn't have the best removal hand right off the bat, so we really want to keep the clamps on and push it home, especially because our resources are running out a little bit. There's a Wrench Caliber, I've mentioned. He's playing the bomb variety of the warrior. Face tanking, that's 6 attack minions, so he's really putting himself down on a very low health total. Not really much to consider here. It's absolute late game for us already. We're going to dump our entire hand here. Gonna summon the Treant and put as much damage into his face as we can, also using the hero power here. He's at 4, and he's really going to have to find it right now, because if not, then we are in a good spot. And this is really where it's mom spaghetti time. We're putting on the clamps, we're trying to take it. If he can clear this up, he can stabilize, he's gonna win. That's how the games go, that's why they're fast. But this is the way we want to play this deck. And there's the resignation. He didn't have anything to deal with our board, and we drove it home. It was a choppy game because we didn't really get exactly what we wanted, but worked out anyway. We're going to play another one and see if we can top that. Second game, we're looking at a Demon Hunter. Demon Hunter, now using a bit of our knowledge, tends to be a very aggressive class, and we are going to go second. So a couple of things to acknowledge here. We have the Gibberling, which is the most important card. We do want to keep that Gibberling, and because it's an aggressive matchup, I really want to pop off on turn 1, which means I'm once again going to aggressively mulligan everything else away here. I would like to find a Nature Studies. I would also like to find maybe some mana gain to really build a white board, and this looks pretty good. I already like what I'm seeing a lot here, especially with me also having the coin in hand. So I'm gonna see, and he's gonna go first and presumably play a minion right away. There we go. It appears to be an aggressive Demon Hunter. Those typically tend to play the Battle Fiend. Now we can do a lot of things here, and this is actually kind of a great example for what this deck is really constructed to do. Just look at this, right? This is turn number 1. Going to play this. Going to play. Actually, let's play this first, and we're going to play this. And we're going to play this. We're going to buff it up. We play the coin, and we sit, and we have a board that looks like we just are 5 turns down. Also, we're drawing 3 cards at the end of the turn. This is basically the perfect example of why we love playing this deck. Because a lot of classes or a lot of opponents have just no way of coming back against this sort of thing on a standard ladder. And we'll see what this Demon Hunter can do. Now, obviously, since we overloaded so much, we don't really have that kind of a play right now, so we have to just use what we have on board. But that's good. We have a tempo matchup in tempo matchups. I know it's tempting to just push it all right into the face. I want to be a bit careful here because I know that he is an aggressive Demon Hunter as well. I don't want him to stick buffs. I don't want him to come back and do the traits that he wants to do. So I care about my minions actually living. I want to take 2 traits here. Take both of these guys out and doing some more face damage. As long as I can stick stuff on the board, I will always be the tempo player. So I'm taking stuff out. Taking it a bit slower because I know that he's not going to run the type of removal that a control deck would. Battle Mage there, and the Orc Merchant. He's trying to catch up, kind of get back into it, but we're going to try not to allow him to do that, obviously. He's using the weapon to face tank a couple of those minions off. Pick up the Nature Studies here, which could be the play. I think what we'll do is we'll stick to our guns, but we go Nature Studies for now. I like the Power of the Wild here a lot because that's one of the cards that we really want. There's an argument to be made to play the Power right now because we have that other one too. And this is kind of where it comes down to, like, flavor of the month. What do you like to do? I like to play Power here. I know I have the other one, and I'm trying to really keep up with the philosophy of trading the way that I want to. Gonna take it easy. He has one card on hand. Knowing your matchup, super key. If this was a control deck, I'm gonna be pushing face, but I know that he can't answer if I stay on the board. So that's really my mindset here. And it really started off on turn 1 with that huge board we built. He never came back to that, so I like my chances here. We're just going to make use of the fact that he doesn't have cards in the hand. We're going to play it very, very carefully. Knowing your matchup is the key part. Recenter the board. Take our trades. He's top decking right now. And we should be able to win this value game because he only draws one card a turn. So we're liking just refocusing, sticking stuff. He gets the reader there, which is very strong for him. Not going to lie, that's a good one. But we're going to make a claim to come right back on this board with the next one because we're going to go wide. We're going to buff up. And hopefully initiate the final push here. Reinforcements is good because it's a nice roundup for the curve here. We're going to go as wide as possible, play our second Power of the Wild to buff this up, and at this point, frankly, I'm not even going to care about the reader anymore. I'm going to start going face here because this is a big board. It's going to do a lot of damage, and I know he doesn't have the removal cards in his deck from experience. Now, that's, if you're a newer player, that's something that comes along with as you just play. You recognize what decks are early in the game, and you kind of tell what cards he has and what cards he doesn't have. He's trying to be defending here. It's not exactly what he wants to play as a Demon Hunter, and we're going to step up. Now, Partner Assignment might be one of the cards to really shine in this, because we're about to hit 6 mana, and that could be a really, really strong value play. That's why we include 1 copy of it. We tried this a bunch with 2 copies, but we like to innovate for those pop-off turns a little bit more. I'm going to go Partner Assignment here and see what we can get from it first. And if we can get some good value cards like this, Wolf, for example, is phenomenal right now. You can plop it between the 2 life stealers and use one to kill the taunt right off the bat. I'm going to do that. And other than that, I want to play those 2 cards here because I want to go wide and also start redrawing again with the Voracious Reader. I'm going to take 1 trade and push the rest to the face, and we're in an extremely strong position. This sort of a Demon Hunter just does not run answers to the board we have, and on top of that we drew Blessing of the Ancients. There should not be a way for him to feasibly come back and win this game. Initiate's not going to do it. Does try to fish with the Skull of Gul'dan, but he's not going to have the answers. This is the exact antithesis to the Warrior game last time, whereas the Warrior ran all the AoE removal, and we kind of played around that and kept the low amount of minions and started going hard. With this one, we really control the board. We know there's not going to be answers if we stick it, and it looks like we're going to win this game. As a matter of fact, we are definitively going to win this game, since he does not seem to have any answers. There's the concede, and we are 2-0. Going to do one more and kind of show off what we can do. So far, it's looking pretty good. Third game, and we have a Mage as our opponent. It's the third class we're facing today. And Mage is quite diverse in the types of decks they like to play in this meta. Typically, it's more slow-ish, more control-ish, so we want to get something in against that. We're going to mulligan very aggressively. We're going to throw away everything we have because we are going first, and we really want a minion to be able to play. And that is right there not a good hand at all to keep. So this is looking a little bit better already. We have our 1-drop, we have our 2-drop, we have the Nature Studies, and now we're trying to draw supplemental cards. Now here's the Gibberling, but you don't want to be a sucker here and just throw it out on the board because that's too aggressive. He knows that the Gibberling is our key card, and we don't have a follow-up turn 1 because we don't have the coin or innervate. So that Gibberling is going to get pinged off because he's going to coin that hero power if he knows what he's facing. We're not going to touch that right now. I'm going to play this 1-drop, and I'm going to be patient, hold the Gibberling until we can start really going off with it and making use of the mechanic of the Spell Burst. Primordial Studies might mean that he's playing an aggressive, more aggressive mage here. There is a very popular archetype that runs a lot of spell damage enhancement, and that's exactly what it is. So right now we already know what our opponent is playing. He wants to do a lot of damage with spells, and he plays things like the Sorcerer's Apprentice and like those small spell damage minions to fight for board and fight for damage. We're going to have to counter that appropriately. I feel like it's just time to play this Troubadour here and compete for the board. We could just use this Acorn Bearer to go face, because I don't love it running into either minion at the moment. So that's what I'm going to do, just establish kind of early, like, I'm going to hit you hard in the face and you have to react to what I'm doing. When you get into that kind of dynamic with the Gibberling Druid, that's typically what you want. You don't want to be reactive, you want your opponent to have to like think about what you're doing. You want to be on the offensive with this deck. Took a lot of trades there. Can't hate him for it. It does make sense. Thinking it might be time for Gibberling, but I might want to hold it for just one more turn to be able to get the value out of it. We have those squirrels and the Troubadour to go with, and I'm going to play this in a more slowish way like we just did against the Demon Hunter 2, because I know he likes to be an aggressive deck. I'm going to even take this trade, leave us 4-0 minions, and next turn hopefully establish an even stronger one. We have the buff, we have the Gibberling on hand, and we're kind of drawing it out to find the right moment to do it. And see what the kind of answers he's looking for here. While it's Spellwing, he's going to use his hero power because he understands he needs to fight for board control as well. The Savage Roar changes my mentality about this quite a bit. Makes me want to be aggressive here, because it would curve quite nicely to play this next turn with a white board and hit him in the face a lot. So I'm thinking this could be the Gibberling turn. Thinking this is going to be the Gibberling turn. I'm going to play it. I'm going to use my Nature Studies, and I'm going to use that Blessing of the Ancients. Innervate is a very interesting idea, but thinking for a second, that would really only serve to use the Squirrel. And the Squirrel is not going to get buffed either, so the answer to me here is going to be a little bit of Foresight, but it's going to be one of the other cards. The question is which one do I like better? I'm going to take the Force of Nature. I'm going to take the Force of Nature for the particular reason that my play for this turn is basically made. I'm going to want to buff, and I'm going to want to go face hard. And I'm going to want to win this game within the next 2 turns. And hopefully next turn with the Savage Roar, I'm going to use the Force of Nature as sort of an insurance. If he clears us up, by any means, or he somehow defends this whole thing, gets rid of the board, I have a reload with the Force of Nature. But optimally, the idea will be to buff up next turn, start going hitting hard. Because the Arcane Missile's trying to remove some stuff. He does hit pretty well, and that's going to kill some other minions too. So he did hit quite well. Right now, there is an option to use the Force of Nature right away. We're going to play the Studies because no matter what, we have a cheaper or reduced spell here. Bees is a very interesting choice in this one, as is all of those, to be quite frank. Now, if we use the bees, we could kill us 3/4 quite efficiently, which is not necessarily a bad idea. Then we will sit with 2 mana, which is not perfect, not exactly what we'd love to do. So I like the Force of Nature a lot as an idea to play here. Just kind of go wide on the board. I'm gonna take the Mark of the Wild there as an extra buff for the future. We're going to use Force of Nature. Stall is up in one more turn, but we're going to keep chipping at his face. He's using kind of those bootleg answers. He doesn't really have the big board clears, the blizzards, the flame strikes. He's not in mana range, so he's using his resources that aren't fully intended for to clear this board up in a choppy way. Sign of weakness, and we have to go and exploit it. We do exploit that by just keeping the board on lock, putting him under pressure to find answers every turn. And that's not the way his deck is constructed. His deck is constructed to do spell damage, to synergize with cards he has. If we force him to play things he doesn't want to play, then we're in a pretty good spot. Expecting him to take a lot of trades here, that's what he's looking to do. Frostbolt also one of those cards that is not optimal to do this removal stuff. And he did find the Arcane Missiles here. Does remove one, does have another one. That's a lot of Arcane Missiles coming off of course, those Spell Wings. And they do serve him quite well. Have to make sure we find a way to stick with this here. I think it's about time we put some more minions on the board and buff them up. This could be just Infestation, could be Squirrel, and a Blessing of the Ancients. Do like that idea. I'm gonna go the Infestation here. Doesn't really matter right now which minion we put it on. I'm gonna put on Tree for now. I want to play both minions and stick to the strategy I've decided on. Buff white boards, present him with just too many things to deal with. there's a consideration here, and there's a dangerous minion. We've seen it before. The Sorcerer's Apprentice is one of the biggest value minions that he has. So there's an idea to take this out. The reason I'm not going to do it is because there's a lot of damage that I, in this case, value to go face. And I also think he has 4 cards, and the shenanigans you can do with that is limited. Calculated risk could come back to bite me. Not infallible, but we'll see what he can come up with here. I like my chances of just pushing damage, especially with a Savage Roar in hand. We need but 2 minions to stick to just win it outright. Now, Devolving Missiles is not a great tool against this deck typically, because it doesn't remove those bodies from the board. It makes them weaker, but it doesn't remove the recipients of the buff. So, if he does remove no more, then right now, let's do a quick calculation. We have 3 on board. Savage Roar gives us 2 times 3, that is 6, which equals out to exactly 9. That's what we want. So, Savage Roar right now for the win. Gonna take it home, and our strategy once again did pay off. We're 3-0 with this deck. It did work out once again. So, we're gonna hop right onto the next screen. I'm gonna give you some reviews for this deck, and I'm gonna send you off with some recommendations, and we'll see you then. So, quick review for the Gibberling Druid, our first budget deck here. Like I mentioned, 1500 dust, and for that, really an unbeatable value for new players. You saw kind of a good overview of how it is supposed to work. Now, not every 3-game streak is going to go as clean as that. You'll have some problems where you run into just control decks, you'll run out of fuel. That happens with every deck, but this really is one of the better ones to start off with, just given the cost that you have. I'm going to look at some of the ratings here, and I want to just give you a little bit of an explanation of how this deck splits up. Starting off with laddering speed, this deck is about as fast as it gets. This is a straight up 5 stars. I've rarely played a game, even this expansion, which has some very, very fast decks in it, that just get the amount of games per hour in as this deck does. Somewhere between 2 and 4 minutes for most games, which is unbeatable with most decks. 5 stars for laddering speed. Simplicity and learning curve is the next one. I'm going to go with 4 stars here. There's some interactions and a little bit of ordering that you have to pay attention to. If you're a really smart guy, you actually notice me doing some smaller ordering mistakes in those sample games before then. And it's not completely trivial. There's a little bit more. There's some decks that are slightly more easy to play that are coming up later on in this series, which means it only gets 4 stars. It is, however, not a hugely complicated game. You have a very straightforward game plan that you're going to execute pretty much every time. A little bit of adjustment to what your opponent's playing, but you're off to go, and it's not a big learning curve for a beginner player. Consistency over games. This is where this deck kind of has slumps every once in a while. I'm going to be completely honest with that. You're not going to go on win streaks all the time, but when you do, you're typically going fast and you're really chaining the wins. I'm going to give this 3 stars here because you're going to hit these moments where it feels like you're just running out of stuff all the time. It does happen. Don't be discouraged by that. You're making up for a couple of losses by playing a lot of games and by getting on really, really strong win streaks. This deck seems to catch momentum like nothing else. So 3 stars for consistency, but we're going fast, and it does definitely have the explosiveness that you want. Lastly is fun, and this obviously is quite subjective. For me personally, I'm going to give it 4 stars for fun. I like playing this deck, I'm not going to lie. I'm typically a control-ish player. Somewhat versatile in what I do, but I do enjoy me a good old Bomb Warrior. Now, the Gibberling Druid is currently my go-to deck to ladder to legend every month. So I'm going to go with that. I like the aspect of playing it. It is fun to have those huge turns like you saw in that second game on turn 1. We had like a 10 power in the game on turn 1, which is just, you don't see that from any other deck. I like seeing that every once in a while, and I'm going to give it 4 stars for fun. But of course, fun is subjective, and I do encourage you, even if you did like this, to check out some of our other budget decks that are coming up. Over the next days and weeks, we're going to make a whole series about it. We're going to have different classes and decks that we have tested, that we've taken, kind of looked at it under the microscope and figured out a good way for beginners and budget players to take advantage of and to really start hitting the ladder hard for a relatively affordable budget. So check those out and maybe try different ones, and you'll find something that you like. Just to recap this deck in testing phase had for us a 64% win rate, which is pretty acceptable. It was tested between the ranks of Diamond 5 to Legend, so pretty high competition, also in Legend quite a bit. 64 win rate over the span of roughly 55 games, which is very acceptable, and I think you can definitely deal with that. It might not be that high, it might be higher depending on the momentum you catch, but is very, very consistently winning and should help you climb the ranks quickly as a new player. And that was it for the first TrashcanTV budget deck, the Gibberling Druid. I hope you enjoyed what we brought to you today, and if you did so, I would ask you to drop a like on this video, subscribe to TrashcanTV, and join our Discord server. I've mentioned it in the beginning, link in the description. You can hang out with our community, learn more Hearthstone, and if you're a beginner, you're kind of new to the game or intermediate, it's the perfect place for you to be. It's where the pros hang out, but you have a lot of like-minded individuals too that play for fun, that are trying to learn, that are constantly like spitballing deck ideas off of each other. So hopefully we'll be able to welcome you there soon. If you want to, you can also follow our Twitter, subscribe to our subreddit. Those are also linked on our channel page. But for that, I've been Alex from TrashcanTV. This is the Budget Gibberling Druid, and we're going to see you in the next one.